So in this video, we're learning how to find the circumference and area of circles. And if we look at the top of our screen, we have two formulas. So the first one is that circumference is equal to 2 pi r, which is just 2 times pi times r. And the second one is that the area is equal to pi r squared, so pi times r squared. So before we actually start doing problems, let's just talk about what circumference means. So circumference is just a fancy word for the perimeter of a circle. So circles just have their own name for perimeter, and it's just circumference. And remember, the perimeter is just like the distance around some shape. And then the area is just going to be the amount of space that the shape takes up. So think about if you shaded like a circle, however much space that takes up, that's the area. And the other thing we want to talk about is this number pi. So in case you guys haven't heard of pi, pi is just an important number in math. It's very important when we're dealing with circles, and it is roughly equal to 3.14. So it's a never-ending decimal that doesn't repeat, so it's an irrational number, but we typically just round it to 3.14. So this is what I'm going to use for pi when I'm solving these problems. And I'm going to use a calculator for this so we don't have to sit here and do out all this decimal multiplication, but I will show you guys when we start the problems. So let's take a look at number 1, which says find the circumference and the area of the circle to the right. So we're going to start with the circumference first. So the circumference is equal to 2 pi r, which is 2 times pi times r. And this r is just going to be our radius. And remember, the radius of a circle is just any line that goes from the center to a point on the edge of the circle. So this is a radius, and now I'm going to draw in some more radii just to show you guys all that you can have basically an infinite number of radii in a circle. So I could draw a radius like this, I could draw a radius like this, I could draw a radius here. So all these green lines and this yellow lines, these are all radii. So the problem gave us the radius. They told us that the radius is equal to 3. So what we want to do is just plug in our radius, and then plug in 3.14 for pi, and then multiply this in our calculator. So we have our circumference is equal to 2 times, again, pi, we're going to use 3.14, and our radius is 3, and I'm going to put 3 meters so we understand what the units are. I'm going to write it out as meters. And now we're just going to multiply in our calculator. So if you take your calculator and you multiply 2 times 3.14 times 3, you should get 18.84, and our units are meters. So because circumference is just the distance around some shape, right, it's like perimeter, our units are just going to be units. We're not going to have units squared or cubed, so we're just going to get that our circumference is 18.84 meters. So now let's find the area. And the formulas are similar. They all involve a 2, a pi, and an r, but the area is going to be pi times r squared. And the way that I remember that area is pi r squared is that the area of things are always measured in like units squared. So if you think about the area of your house, it would be in like square feet, or the area of a rug would be in square feet. So that's how I remember that area is the formula with the squared. So the area is pi times r squared. And again, our radius is 3 meters. So we're going to put in 3.14 for pi, and then we're going to put in 3 meters for our radius. So we have that our area is equal to 3.14 times 3 meters squared. And remember, squaring something just means multiplying it by itself. So 3 squared is 9. So 3 meters squared is going to be 9 meters squared. So our units for area are always going to come out as units squared. And now our last step is to go to our calculator and multiply 3.14 by 9. And if you do that, you should get that our area is equal to 28.26 meters squared. So now we're going to take a look at example 2, which is similar. We just don't have a picture. It says find the circumference and area of a circle with a radius of 8 feet. So I'm just going to underline that our radius is 8 feet. And we're just going to do the same thing that we did for number 1. So our circumference is going to be equal to 2 times pi times our radius. So we're going to plug in 3.14 for pi. And we're going to plug in 8 feet for our radius. And now we just want to multiply. So we're going to go to our calculator. We want to multiply 2 times 3.14 times 8. And if you guys do that, we should get that our circumference is 50.24, and we can't forget the units, which are just feet. Over here on the right, we'll do the area. So area is equal to pi times r squared. So again, pi, we're going to use 3.14 times our radius of 8 feet squared. So we need to square that whole thing. And now we're going to simplify that 8 feet squared. So we're going to keep 3.14. Squaring a number just means multiplying it by itself. So 8 feet times 8 feet is going to give us 64 feet squared. And finally, we're going to go to our calculator and multiply 3.14 by 64. And if you guys do that, we should get 200.96, and our units are feet squared. So now we're going to go over some examples where they give us the diameter instead of the radius, and we'll do a review of what the diameter is. So if we take a look at number 3, it says find the circumference and area of the circle to the right. And this time we're given the diameter. And the diameter is just any line that goes from one side of the circle to the other that passes through the center. And if you look at it, you might notice that the diameter is twice the radius. So I'm going to put that up here. So we'll put the diameter equals 2 times the radius. So the radius is just half of the diameter. So the radius is this little line right here, and that's just going to be 12 centimeters. So we're going to do the problem the same way. We just had an extra step where we had to find the radius given the diameter. So now let's jump into finding the circumference. So the circumference is equal to 2 times pi times r, and we're just going to plug in our values. So we have 2 times 3.14 as pi, times our radius, which again, half the diameter, is 12 centimeters. And now we're going to go to our calculator and we're going to multiply 2 times 3.14 times 12 centimeters, and we should get 75.36 centimeters. And now if we want to do the area, I'll do it over here. So area is pi times the radius squared. So pi is 3.14. And again, our radius is 12 centimeters, so 12 centimeters squared. We're going to keep the 3.14 as it is, and we're going to simplify this 12 centimeters squared. So 12 squared is just 12 times 12, which is 144. And the centimeters are also squared. And finally, we're going to go to our calculator and multiply 144 by 3.14. And we get 452.16, and we can't forget our units of centimeters squared. So we get that our area is 452.16 centimeters squared. Let's take a look at example 4, which is similar. Again, we just don't have a picture. So it says find the circumference and area of a circle with a diameter of 11 inches. So if you guys want a visual, just draw this up here. So we have a diameter of 11 inches. And remember, the radius is just half the diameter. So this is going to be our radius. So half of 11 is just 11 divided by 2. So if we divide 11 by 2, you guys can use a calculator if you need to, we're going to get 5.5 inches. So I'm going to write down here that our radius is 5.5 inches. And now we're just going to plug that into our formulas. So circumference is 2 times pi times r. So we're going to do 2 times 3.14 times our radius of 5.5 inches. And we're going to plug this into our calculator. 2 times 3.14 times 5.5. And we should get a circumference of 34.54 inches. And now moving on to area. We know the area is equal to pi times r squared. So we're going to plug in 3.14 for pi. We're going to plug in our radius of 5.5 inches, and we want to put the units in there so we don't forget them. So 5.5 inches squared. And now we want to simplify that 5.5 inches, that whole thing squared. So to square 5.5, we're going to multiply 5.5 by itself in our calculator. And we should get 30.25. And we square the inches, so we get inches squared. And finally, multiply 3.14 by 30.25. And we should get 94.985 inches squared. So we're going to go through 2 more examples to make sure we've got it down. So for these next 2 examples, I encourage you guys to pause the video and try them on your own, and then you can watch me go through them to make sure that you've done them correctly. And I've given you guys one where I give you the radius and one where I give you the diameter, so you can practice both types of problems. So number 5, find the circumference and area of the circle to the right. So they give us the radius of 5. So let's jump into the circumference. So we have 2 times pi times our radius. So we're going to do 2 times 3.14 times our radius of 5 inches. And now we just want to put this into our calculator. So if you multiply 2 by 3.14 by 5 inches, we should get 31.4 inches. So now we're going to do the area, which is pi times our radius squared. So pi is 3.14. Our radius is 5 inches, so we're going to square 5 inches. And let's square that 5 inches first. So 5 times 5 is 25, and inches squared is just going to be inches squared. And now we want to multiply 3.14 by 25, and if we do that, we get 78.5 inches squared. Finally, let's go through number 6. So we need the circumference and area of a circle with a diameter of 18. Remember, diameter is twice the radius, so our radius is half the diameter. So it's going to be 9 yards. So for circumference, we're going to do 2 times pi times our radius. So we're going to do 2 times 3.14 times our radius of 9 yards. And we're going to punch this into our calculator, 2 times 3.14 times 9. And if you do that, you should get 56.52 yards. And now for the area, same thing we've been doing. Area is pi r squared. So we're going to have pi, which is 3.14, times our radius of 9 yards squared. Let's simplify this 9 yards squared first. So 9 times 9 is 81, and then we're going to have yards squared. And finally, we want to multiply 3.14 times 81. If you guys do that in your calculator, you should get 254.34 yards squared. So hopefully this video helped you guys learn how to find the circumference and area of circles. You just have to remember these 2 formulas, and you have to remember that pi is 3.14 and that the radius is half of the diameter.